Israeli attacks on Iran. And quickly, we just want to bring you up to speed. The U.S. and Israel, they have carried out large-scale strikes inside Iran. Iran's supreme leader has been killed. The Red Crescent is confirming 555 people have died inside Iran. And we can confirm Iran is retaliating militarily. Hezbollah, a proxy of Iran, has entered this conflict, and Israel is now striking Lebanon. There's a lot to unpack here, and on this day 3 of this crisis, the question is no longer whether escalation will occur, but rather how far it will spread. To help us understand where we are right now in this conflict, I'm joined here to my immediate right by our Middle East analyst, Shani Rosanes. Familiar face here. She's been doing double duty today. And to her right is Teresa Tropa. She is our Iranian analyst. Both of you, it's good to have you in the studio with us. And let me just go straight to you, Shani. I mean, 24 hours ago, we were talking about this being a limited conflict, and now we're talking about contagion possibilities here. Is this a controlled conflict at the moment, or is it quickly going out of control? We're
seeing it widening and widening. We see more and more countries getting into the circle of effect. We've seen this morning Saudi oil refineries being targeted. We might see them feel the need to respond. We are seeing Cyprus being drawn in. So it's more and more. But that's still, it's very slow. And Iran is not fully using all of its leverage, hasn't gone all in. It could have gone much wider in attacks of oil facilities, oil fields, energy infrastructure in all of the Gulf. We're not seeing that yet. So they still have where to escalate, I'm afraid. But then at the same time, Israel and the U.S. are also relentlessly attacking Iran and closer and closer in the capital, not just in, looking for launchers and stockpiles, in the outskirts, but really trying to target the regime and the system of that it has built, and trying to weaken the regime necessary to ensure, military superiority.
Do we know at this moment, and Teresa, I'll pull you in on this too, I mean, do we know who is in control right now inside Tehran?
Now, that's the big question, because the supreme leader who controlled everything is gone, and a successor has not been found yet. I mean, there's a council that was formed that's in charge at the moment, but there is some indication that the chain of command is actually disrupted, because the foreign minister said that there are some groups, some military units within Iran that are acting independently now on pre-issued orders. So there is some confusion to a degree, of course. Yeah.
I mean, that's very unsettling, right? I mean, we're not talking about we're not talking about a small country here. We're talking about a country that has a huge military.
Two, actually.
Two military, exactly. And it's basically been decapitated.
Yeah. I mean, Khamenei has centralized power to himself and his close allies in the last decades to have a tight grip on power, and that is now obviously a problem with him gone unexpectedly. I mean, he was 86 years old, so it does not come as a total surprise that he's gone at some point. But just right now, it seems there's a lot of confusion going on.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that in a second. I want to ask you, Shani, other players in this that are suddenly popping up. Saudi Arabia. Where does it stand in this?
Well, we've seen a lot of mixed messages there. We've seen a lot of, there were reports that maybe, despite the fact that they were publicly lobbying against this attack, maybe they were actually supporting it in back channels with Donald Trump. Now we've been also seeing that, they need to carefully consider their response now, because they have said already yesterday that if they feel that it's necessary, they save themselves the right to retaliate. And still, we have not seen any action on the ground. We did see just earlier today, this morning, a joint statement with the Saudis, the Bahrainis, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, all joining, Jordan and Kuwait, all joining together with the Americans, basically condemning the Iranians, saying they have the right for self-defense whenever needed, and of course showing how they're appalled by the Iranians choosing to target civilian infrastructure and not just military bases. Because what's the Iranian claim, basically, when it's extending this circle of retaliation? Basically, they're saying to the Gulf, you're harboring U.S. forces, you have U.S. bases on your land, therefore you are complicit in this war, you are part of this war, you need to take sides. They're dragging them in.
That's what we're seeing right now, right,
Correct.
Shani?
Yeah, I haven't seen this footage before.
This is the refinery that was hit earlier?
Yes, it seems like it. Yeah, indeed. And again, there's a lot of reluctance. You know, the Gulf countries, Saudi among them, find themselves in a bit of a bind here. You know, they are very close with Trump. They cannot publicly go out and condemn him. However, there are also many voices, if you read, you know, leading op-eds in the region, they feel that they've been dragged to a war that is not theirs. You know, this is really, they see themselves as the ones that have no stake in the game. What Iran is telling them is that these days are over. You gotta pick sides. A country like Qatar that had seen itself as an ally of Iran, but at the same time has the biggest U.S. military base in the Middle East. You know, you cannot play on both fields anymore.
Can we do that right now, Sean? I mean, can we do a U.S.-Israeli side and Iran side? I mean, can we delineate that and go down the list and say these countries are obviously on one side or the other?
Well, it seems like they're forced to take sides, and most of them are on the U.S. side. Iran is actually, and I think Teresa will agree, is quite isolated. It's quite amazing to see, even when it comes to its proxies. We've seen very limited response, in very limited success and very limited scale. All of those who are Iran's natural allies, like Russia, for example.
Well, yeah, you're reading my mind. I mean, I didn't want to push this further, but I mean, Iran could be looking to Russia for some sort of support, right?
Yeah, and then there are definitely rumors that they did so, but they didn't get much in response because they were considered to be allies with Russia and also with China. But apart from condemning the US and Israeli strikes, so far these two have not done much to support the Islamic Republic. So it looks like they're increasingly on their own when it comes to allies here.
And it's especially interesting because Iran has been gearing the whole region. You know, everybody has eyes and was seeing this building up in the region in the last couple of weeks. But definitely Iran has had, you know, death to Iran and death to Israel and death to America is a slogan chanted in Iran for 47 years now. You know, but when it comes to the actual plans on the ground, you see now that they're actually not as well prepared as you could have imagined or would have expected from a regime that's been doing so much for so long to try and fortify its grip on power and to ensure its long-lasting survival.
I know a question a lot of people watching us right now, but people around the world, I know we were talking about this earlier in the newsroom, is are we talking about a limited conflict right now? We know that President Trump has said, he said yesterday, expect, 4 to 6 weeks for this to last. Is it something that can be contained and quantified like that? Or are we at the beginning of something that could, explode into a much wider conflict? And I don't want to throw that word out there, but I mean, everyone's been asking today, are we talking about something along the lines of a world war? Is that where this could lead us? Teresa.
I mean, it certainly depends on how things unfold now, because for now it's still somewhat limited, but we haven't seen large numbers of US Americans killed, or with these attacks against an UK base in Cyprus, Europeans could get involved. So far also the Gulf countries have not retaliated actually, but there's a lot of talk about that. At what point do you start retaliating? How long do you just wait and see how many strikes actually happen on your country? I mean, it's not like the Iranians are only striking US air bases across the region. So many missiles and drones have actually hit other stuff like airports, hotels, oil refineries, all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of potential for more escalation here.
But let's try to analyze it. I mean, where do you see Europeans and where do you see the Russians? Because these would be the more meaningful players. I mean, Russia is still entangled very much with Ukraine. You know, we just had the 4-year day since the launching of this, what was supposed to be a 3-day limited operation from Putin's side. So they don't have much appetite to go further. They don't have much of an ability, and they are also somewhat deterred by Iran's, being crippled, because they were getting some supplies of drones, for example, from Iran. They, of course, get some oil also from Iran, so that's also something that they would need. The Europeans, it's amazing, they've been very unhappy with this development. We've heard Macron very much airing his frustration to the fact that there was no diplomatic solution that was achieved. He claims there could have been one, but then at the same time, we are in a position where Trump's stature in the world is such that it's very hard to publicly go against him, to be, and also now Iran being, the state that it is, Khamenei being the aggressive oppressor tyrant that he has been.
Yeah.
It's also very hard for any European country to say, well, we're actually standing on the side of Iran. And I think in that aspect, Netanyahu and mostly Trump were very strategic in framing this as almost a gift to the Iranian people. We are doing a service to, the way they say it, doing this service to an oppressed people who have been fighting and wanting to have freedom for so long. So it's really hard for anybody to come against this.
And Shani, before we go on to Israel, I want to just ask you, what worries you the most that could possibly happen in the next 24 hours? I mean, what are you watching for and hoping does not happen?
Well, we always need to think about miscalculation. There can always be a stray missile going in the wrong direction in either way, and then the response will going to go, overboard. We see Israel is stretched to its max. We need to keep in mind, Israel has been engaged in active war of some sort for 2.5 years. It's stretched in all fronts. I mean, now with Hezbollah, Lebanon. The future of Lebanon could be very much on the line here with another round of hostilities. This could be a deadly, effect for so many people in Lebanon who are trying to recover and lift their heads up. But I think mostly we need to think of miscalculations, I think, and see where it goes. The Israelis are very much counting on. You see also their attacks, where they're heading now. With their attacks, Israelis and Americans. They are trying to weaken more and more the structure of the regime, and they hope to get the civil action in Iran in movement. And that, with a desperate regime that is back to the wall, could be extremely deadly for thousands and thousands of Iranians who might try to, respond to Trump's call to take their faith in their hands.
Shani, stand by now. I mean, my producer is telling me that the IDF has just announced. Tell me again, if you could, Phil, what we're just getting. Okay, we've got evacuation orders now that are now in effect for the southern part of Beirut ahead of incoming strikes that will be coming from the IDF. We've got that has just been announced, and now we've got a wrap-up from our correspondent, Stella Menner, who is in Beirut. She sent us this in earlier today. Take a look.
In Beirut is still very, very tense. I'm standing here on the streets. People woke up last night around 2:30 o'clock in the morning to the heavy bombardment by Israel, and many people fled their homes, especially from Dahi, from the southern suburbs of Beirut that were heavily hit. I'm standing here at Martyr Square, which is a very central place in Beirut during the last war in 2024. People gathered here, tried to take some shelter, and this is what is happening now again. There are not as many people as there used to be in 2024, but already people are here setting up their tents, just sitting on the streets, and generally, people are very stressed and worried because they're just fed up with Hezbollah. So many people said, why again? And is Hezbollah dragging us into a war? And people are really trying to find safe places now, because here in Lebanon, we don't have any sirens warning us, and people also don't have any shelters. So many people who live in the southern suburbs of Beirut are just now forced to stay on the roads, on the streets.
All right, that was Stella Menner there reporting from Beirut. I want to take this now to our correspondent, Tanya Kramer, who is standing by in Jerusalem for us. Tanya, good to see you. I mean, what can you tell us about this evacuation order for southern Beirut?
Well, it's not the first one today. Actually, earlier in the day, we already had an evacuation order by the spokesperson here for the Israeli military, the Arabic spokesperson, asking citizens in the south of Lebanon to evacuate at least 53 villages there. So there's a huge movement, I suppose, from people. Again, you have to understand, I mean, they just were moving back, obviously, to these areas. Now they've been told to go out. And we just heard also this new order, or warning rather, by the Israeli military that people should stay away from certain institutions as well, from infrastructure that is affiliated with Hezbollah, and they're saying throughout Lebanon. So we are expecting that those airstrikes that started, and we've seen airstrikes also before this conflict in Lebanon, but now Israel is saying, basically from a military spokesperson who spoke earlier to us in the media, saying that Hezbollah has now joined the war, in his words, and and in support of its sponsor Iran. This is how it's being seen here, and that's why we're seeing when Hezbollah launched some rockets around 1 a.m. here local time in the morning towards Israel, and this is now the retaliation for it, and we have to see where this is going.
And Tanya, should we be surprised by this? Because we've talked numerous times about the weakening of Hezbollah, and now we're talking about Hezbollah suddenly being a force that needs to be dealt with in Lebanon again. I mean, were we maybe overestimating the weakness of Hezbollah?
I mean, this doesn't come really as a surprise. I think the messaging, at least here in Israel, is that, Israel is very prepared for this. They have been preparing for this for many, many months. And also what we've seen also since, the ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel, Israel was still operating in Lebanon, especially in southern Lebanon. So there have been even accusations from both sides, that they have violated the ceasefire, so to speak. So it doesn't come fully as a surprise. I mean, it was more seen as a matter of time whether Hezbollah would now join in. After the attack from Israel and the US on Iran, what will Hezbollah do? And Israel says, and messaging is here, we are really fully prepared for this scenario.
All right, so I want to bring this back inside Israel for a moment. Can you give us an idea, Tanya, of what is it like right now on this Monday inside Israel?
Well, people here woke up again across the country to air raid sirens, to alarms, asking people to go to a protective space if they have one. Not everybody has a shelter here. I also have to stress that. And again, there were another wave later in the day, and there's the latest. There was actually a direct hit of a missile that was not intercepted, apparently, in a residential neighborhood in Beersheba, which is in the south, in the Negev, in Israel. Here we are hearing there were mainly injuries of people, again also a hit on a residential neighborhood. So you can see, this is very unpredictable. It really disrupts. People never know when these alerts will come, and this affects not just Israel but also people in the occupied West Bank. There were reports today also of shrapnel falling down in this area, and what we're not talking about anymore is also what's happening in Gaza, where in the past 2 days Israel has decided to close all the crossings again. We talked a lot about the Rafah crossing. Everything is now shut.
I know, Tanya, that Israel has now opened what the military is calling an offensive campaign against Hezbollah. I'm just wondering, how close then does this bring us to the Israeli military finding itself on fighting a multi-front war simultaneously?
Well, I think, since, and I think Shani has, talked about this a bit earlier, it sees itself being in a multi-front war since October 7. It has been on this footing all the time, and now what we're seeing right now, it's expanding again because a lot of the issues have not been solved. So this is the view from Israel. But of course, the situation is not as easy. We also know that the country is rather stretched when it comes to the reserve forces. Many of those reserve soldiers have been on duty for hundreds of days, either on the northern border or on the border with or demarcation line with Syria, also in Gaza, obviously. And I think, while there has been, in the country some euphoria in a way, that there was some kind of success early on in this attack on Iran. by the targeted killing of the supreme leader Khamenei, I think, with the time moving forward, people also want to see, so what is the outcome of all of this? And this really depends, certainly will depend, and, the mood will depend on this as well.
Shani.
No, I think Tanya is right in the sense that Netanyahu has built, the Iranian threat, and the need to tackle the Iranian threat as a big part of his policy for decades now. And in a way, we know. The week before the attack, polls were showing the country was split. About only 50% were supporting that. But as it is undergoing, you also see the opposition joining forces. Everybody, rallying to the flag. Everybody supporting Netanyahu in this cause. It's very hard to object that, and it's part of this mindset that Trump, Tanya was mentioning, that Israel is in since October 7th. And it's more than just the idea of.
But Shani, where is the military in Israel? What are they focused on? Are they focused on deterrence? Are they focused on regime pressure in Iran, or sustained regional confrontation? I mean, those are three different things.
I think a bit of everything. I think Israel really enjoys, they like to position themselves as almost as a crazy guy, the crazy force in the Middle East. Sort of, we're unpredictable. Don't try us. We're gonna, but also very much not shy averse, not shy, conflict shy. Sort of like we are going to respond very aggressively whenever we see a threat. And this comes as conclusion drawn from October 7th, where many felt like Israel was seeing Iran Hamas building up on the border of Israel and willing to contain that. And of course, we know how it all happened, and in the end, it now exploded back in Israel's face. So Israel's policy since October 7th is hit hard, and hit harder because they feel this is the way. If you're talking about deterrence, they feel like this is the way to build deterrence.
Tanya, I want to ask you, before we run out of time with you, I'll ask you what I asked my colleagues here a couple of minutes ago. I mean, what are you most worried about and hoping will not happen in the next 24 hours?
Well, I think we're not even thinking about the next 24 hours. I think people here just, go day by day, and I think everybody sees that this is, really like a broader conflict. I mean, that is, I think, what surprised a lot of people here, that Iran is retaliating also against other countries here in the region. It was always framed more about something between Israel and Iran, and of course, because it's a joint attack between the US and Israel. And I think this is what is concerning for a lot of people here. And, because also there is a certain uncertainty, to speak, what is happening next. Right now, I think people are just, trying to go, day by day. We know at least until Wednesday, most of the workplaces are being still not allowed to operate. Schools are being closed, so daily life is clearly interrupted here, and so people, just basically have to wait and see right now what the next few days will bring.
Okay, Tanya Kramer for us in Jerusalem. Tanya, it's always good to get your valuable insights, and good to see that you are safe and sound. We certainly hope it stays that way. Thank you. So, the situation right now, and I want to come back to this. We keep hitting on this and I don't think we can hit on it too many times, Shani, that this is no longer a confrontation between the U.S., Israel, and Iran.
And that's very much to Iran's making. They decided to bring in basically all of the Middle East from Iraq through, all the way down to the Gulf. So they wanted, I'm again trying to, Teresa might be better in reading their minds, but the assumption is that they are trying to build pressure on Trump via the Gulf countries' pressure. But at the same time, what they have done is that they have, first of all, cemented the Gulf countries to each other. Because, for example, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have had lots of pressure. In the last couple of weeks, we're talking about almost a clear hostile conflict between the two. all of this gone and done. We are seeing now, the one thing we are seeing clearly is that they are trying to have a joint decision, a joint strategy in fighting Iran and in fighting this conflict. That's one thing that they did. So uniting the Gulf countries and at the same time also bringing them much closer to Israel, forcing them to align with the U.S. and therefore with Israel and with this line of action and with this attack that is quite, the UN yesterday was talking about how this is against all international laws, entrenching on the sovereignty of Iran. Technically, that is true, but in the case of the Iranian regime, it's very hard to find many people who will defend, or will not defend this decision that Israel and the U.S. has taken.
And Teresa, if we can't talk about the strategy that Iran is taking, is it as simple as the enemy of my enemy has to be my friend?
Yeah, I'm not really seeing Iran see anyone as friends right now. Basically, they are lashing out all across the Middle East. And I think that's probably due to an improved strategy, they would say, because last year when they were attacked, they basically hit mainly back towards Israel, sent all the missiles they had that way at once, and then found that they were actually not even able to hit something really. Like most of their missiles were intercepted, like 99%, something like that. So this time, apparently, they have decided not to send all of the missiles towards Israel, but one by one to different targets, targeting the US and its allies, because they apparently found that the US is the weaker link here, because Israel is just used to being under threat all of the time, while the US is not. So I guess the thinking in Tehran is something like, okay, if we hit the US day by day and there's casualties on their side, on the side of their allies, then pressure might mount on Trump, like from home and also from his allies to stop this.
That's a good point, because we haven't talked about that. There is no appetite in the United States whatsoever for what we're seeing right now, is there?
Not much. We're seeing just a Reuters poll from Saturday that shows there's very, at least quarter of the not more than quarter of the Americans that show enthusiastic support for this attack. I just want to pick up on Teresa. She has also an interesting point when it comes to, the war strategy of Iran, because Iranian drones, for example, when they hit Israel, they were completely meaningless. First, it took them too long to get there. We're talking about 7-8 hours to cross over the desert to Israel, and by then they were all intercepted. But we see them now in Cyprus, in Bahrain, there, and where they can actually make substantial damage, because the air defense systems in those places is much weaker than the one in Israel, and that helps them maximize their arsenal.
And that also speaks to some sort of strategy, doesn't it? The fact that they're able to do that now, and in the past we didn't see that happening.
Yeah, but again, it might be backfiring. I mean, I think trying to find a bigger strategy for Iran, it seems like now they're just trying everything almost.
Yeah, I mean, basically with the attack against Khamenei and the killing of Khamenei, that was kind of ultimately crossing Iran's ultimate red line. So there's nothing left that could be crossed for them. So for the regime, I don't think there's any point in holding back now, because what's left to lose if your supreme leader is already killed? I mean, so maybe that's why they're lashing out and without thinking too much about the consequences.
Well, it's definitely.
We also need to keep in mind, Brent, Iran is fighting double war. It has all the external war that it's gauging, but also internally. The Iranians need to show strength in order to intimidate their own people, in order to remain, in control when it comes to the regime, to the Revolutionary Guard, to the revolution. So if they are showing weakness, if they are, projecting to be in any way willing to compromise, they're very much afraid that the next
people
front,
are going to turn
exactly, the next front will be internal, and that's going to be very hard.
And that's the biggest enemy the Islamic Republic has. I don't think it's Israel or the United States, it's the Iranian people.
So the timing of this then, even if the United States, the majority of Americans say Donald Trump, no way, it's actually, if you're looking at it as a way to cause regime change in Iran, the timing of this could be perfect.
Well, I don't think Iran has been that weak ever, basically, in the last 47 years, definitely 37 years of Khamenei since he took over, and it was very clear. I think the Iranians kind of, underestimated how clearly the world see their fragility and how transparent they are to mostly U.S. and Israel intelligence and defense operations. So I think that's also part of the miscalculation for Khamenei himself, who had led himself to be out of his fortified bunker on Saturday morning and being, a target for an attack. And I think there were also, we're talking about the U.S. Reluctant support to this, among the public.
Yeah.
I think they were banking on that. U.S. being in the year of election, we're expecting the midterm election in November. Trump, seeing himself as the president of peace, he doesn't want to start new ones. He wants. I think they were banking on him being more willing to compromise as a negotiation than taking this political risk. He might be putting not just himself, the whole Republican Party in, and they were surprised with that.
Yeah, we want to broaden this out a little bit and stay with this notion of this being a wider conflict, and that's going to take us to Dubai. I mean, Dubai is a place where people think normally if they're going to go somewhere in that part of the world, they're going to go to Dubai for vacation. Well, they're not leaving if they happen to be in Dubai right now, and that includes our very own Emily Gordine. She is standing by live in Dubai. And Emily, tell us the story here. You're not going anywhere, at least for the foreseeable future, right?
No, I'm one of the thousands of tourists who have been stranded in Dubai following the Iranian retaliatory attacks that have also hit the Gulf states and that have also hit specifically the United Arab Emirates. Most of the people are stuck in hotels at this point. Some have managed to leave via Oman, via the land crossing over to Muscat, and then they flew out through the airport in Muscat. There are reports of the very wealthy in Dubai who have taken the land route to Saudi Arabia, to Riyadh, and have then chartered private jets to their homes. But the vast majority is still stuck in Dubai, and that includes myself, yes.
And are you getting a sense, Emily, there that people in Dubai, but I'm thinking about in general in the Gulf states, are they aware of the real possibility of being pulled into this conflict and making it an even wider conflict?
Well, look, the people that I've spoken to so far who live in Dubai, they certainly expected some strikes on the UAE to begin with because it hosts US air bases. They did not expect to become targets themselves. And there is a concern that the UAE is being specifically backed into a corner here. The UAE so far has responded to the attacks by using its significant air defenses to parry these strikes, right? So they've had to deal with over 160 missile launches and over 500 drone attacks from Iran. And the majority of them, the vast majority, over 93% of them have been intercepted. That is huge for a country like the United Arab Emirates. Now, of course, a country can only sustain these defenses for a certain amount of time. It took years for the UAE to build up this kind of defense system, and it is being rapidly depleted. And of course, that raises the question of, will the UAE respond to this in any form militarily? How that would look, we don't know. It could be that the UAE will allow the US to use its military sites to strike Iran directly. So far, that's not happened. Could it engage itself in attacks on Iran? We don't know that. But what we do know is that the UAE does not want an escalation. The UAE is part of the Gulf states here. They've all been largely engaged in trying to dissuade Donald Trump from attacking Iran. That has not helped. And that, of course, raises the question of how much influence they have in now trying to wind down this American Israeli-led operation.
Emily, I ask you this. Dubai has long marketed itself as a safe global transit point. We know, lots of people change planes there every day, every hour. Has that perception, has it changed over the past 48 hours?
It depends. Look, if you're a tourist in Dubai, or if you live in Dubai, then you will mostly try to go about your day as normal as possible. in Israel, when I was, that's where I'm usually stationed, when there's a missile launch from Iran, there are sirens everywhere, you get loud alerts on your phone. This is not the case here. Rarely will you get an alert on your phone about incoming missiles. So the only way you really are made aware of any attacks is if you hear the interceptions, the explosions in the air.
Emily, let me interrupt you. We are going to go now to the United States. The U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is holding a press conference. We want to drop into that for a moment. Let's take a listen.
President Donald J. Trump, the Department of War launched Operation Epic, the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial operation in history. For 47 long years, the expansionist and Islamist regime in Tehran has waged a savage, one-sided war against America. They didn't always declare it openly, except for their constant chants of death to America. They did it through the blood of our people. Car bombs in Beirut, rocket attacks on our ships, murders at our embassies, roadside bombs in Iraq and Afghanistan, funded and armed by Iranian Quds Force and IRGC killers. My generation of veterans carry the names of brothers who never came home. Brothers butchered by Iranian-backed roadside bombs and well-armed militias, thousands of our own. We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it. Their war on Americans has become our retribution against their Ayatollah and his death cult. It took the 47th president, a fighter who always puts America first, to finally draw the line after 47 years of Iranian belligerence. He reminded the world, as he has time and time again, being an American means something unbreakable. If you kill Americans, if you threaten Americans anywhere on earth, we will hunt you down without apology and without hesitation, and we will kill you. President Trump has also been very consistent. Crazy regimes like Iran, hell-bent on prophetic Islamist delusions, cannot have nuclear weapons. It's common sense. Many have said it, but it takes guts to actually enforce it, and our president has guts. Iran's stubborn and self-evident nuclear pursuits, their targeting of global shipping lanes, and their swelling arsenal of ballistic missiles and killer drones are no longer tolerable risks. Iran was building powerful missiles and drones to create a conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Let me say that again. A conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Our bases, our people, our allies, all in their crosshairs. Iran had a conventional gun to our head as they tried to lie their way to a nuclear bomb. It almost worked under Obama and his terrible deal, but not under this president. Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it. Today, in their desperation, the enemy is unmasked as Iranian missiles and drones rain down indiscriminately on the hotels, airports, apartments, and other civilian targets of their neighbors. Cowardly terrorist tactics from a regime that for decades has trafficked in cowardly terrorist tactics, lies, death, and destruction to this day. The Iranian leadership has built nothing except proxies and missiles and drones and deeply buried nuclear factories and facilities. Peaceful nuclear ambitions do not need to be buried underneath mountains. Last June, Operation Midnight Hammer obliterated their nuclear program to rubble. Afterward, we told them plainly, that's it, now make a deal. They arrogantly refused. We said, rebuild it, and we'll stop you again, this time far worse. Well, President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, they bent over backwards for real diplomacy, offering pathway after pathway to peace. I watched it. I was there. They tried over and over and over again earnest attempts at peace, the former regime had every chance to make a peaceful and sensible deal. But Tehran was not negotiating. They were stalling, buying time to reload their missile stockpiles and restart their nuclear ambitions. Their goal, hold us hostage, threatening to strike our forces. Well, President Trump doesn't play those games. And as Secretary Rubio said after the Maduro raid, if you don't know, now you know. President Trump puts America and Americans first. He doesn't hesitate, and neither do our troops. The mission of Operation Epic Fury is laser-focused. Destroy Iranian offensive missiles, destroy Iranian missile production, destroy their navy and other security infrastructure, and they will never have nuclear weapons. We're hitting them surgically, overwhelmingly, and unapologetically. With every passing day, our capabilities get stronger and Iran's get weaker. We set the terms of this war, from start to finish. Our ambitions are not utopian. They are realistic, scoped to our interests and the defense of our people and our allies. Speaking of people, we hope the Iranian people take advantage of this incredible opportunity. President Trump has been clear, now is your time. To Iranian security forces, choose wisely. President Trump has also been clear about your fate in either direction. To the media outlets and political left screaming endless wars, stop. This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb, and he's right. This is the opposite. This operation is a clear, devastating, decisive mission. Destroy the missile threat, destroy the Navy, no nukes. Israel has clear missions as well, for which we are grateful. Capable partners, as we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects. All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. We fight to win, and we don't waste time or lives. As the president warned, an effort of this scope will include casualties. War is hell, and always will be. A grateful nation honors the 4 Americans we have lost thus far and those injured. The absolute best of America. May we prosecute the remainder of this operation in a manner that honors them. No apologies, no hesitation, epic fury for them and the thousands of Americans before them, taken too soon by Iranian radicals. Before I turn it over to General Kane for the operational update, let me speak straight to you, the Joint Force, our warriors on the front lines. This is your moment. This is the generational turning point America has waited for since 1979, and since the rudderless wars of hubris my generation, our generation, endured. Don't listen to the noise. Just stay focused. Our commander-in-chief is steady at the wheel. We face a determined enemy, but you are better. But we must prove it every single day. History doesn't care if we're tired, if we're scared, or if the fight feels big. It demands warriors who rise anyway. Peace through strength, the warrior ethos, lethality, unity of purpose, those are not slogans. They're the beating heart of what it means to wear the uniform, that uniform. You think clearly under fire, you act decisively in chaos, you uphold the Constitution, and you uphold our country without hesitation. We are not defenders anymore. We are warriors, trained to kill the enemy and break their will. History is watching. Be the force you swore an oath to be: focused, disciplined, lethal, and unbreakable. We will finish this on America First conditions of President Trump's choosing, nobody else's, as it should be. And know this above all: President Trump and I have your back, always. Through fire, through criticism, through fake news, through everything. We unleash you because you are the best, most powerful, most lethal fighting force the world has ever seen. May Almighty God watch over you, and his providential arms of protection extend over you. Godspeed, warriors, and keep going. General Kane, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone. The purpose of my portion of the briefing today is to update you and the American people on the actions taken thus far.
We were just
the briefing will discuss
listening to a press conference by the U.S. Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, definitely sounding like the U.S. Secretary of War, which he prefers to be called. And what stuck out to me, and I'll ask both of you to comment on this, he just said that, I mean, this is a very combative speech that we just heard. He said that the United States will set the terms. It sets the terms of the beginning of this, and it sets the terms for the ending of it. Do we have any idea then of how and when this conflict is going to end?
Well, there are several scenarios. I mean, there's some suggestion that Trump saying he's aware of the possibilities for people, for the next nominees to be to be the supreme leaders of Iran. So there are talks about the second phase of this, in the sense of the Americans looking for a sort of a Venezuela-like way out, finding pragmatic leaders who can take over and work together with the U.S. on this new form of Iran. Even if it's not going to be a complete regime change, it's going to be a more practical, U.S.-friendly regime. That's one option, for example, for a way out. But he's also saying very clearly, one of the things he said, that the goals for the U.S. are no missiles and no nukes as well. We need to bring to our viewers' attention the fact that the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, had just announced just earlier this morning that they have no indications for any hit on any of Iran's nuclear facilities. So we are far from completing all of the goals that Israel and America have set for this goal. If the main goal is to obliterate Iran nuclear facilities, we are not there yet.
Which speaks to the 4 to 6 weeks that President Trump mentioned yesterday.
Correct, and this is also, I think, something that the Hegseth was trying to very clearly say. Says this is not an endless war. There is going to be an end date, but he also basically says we have still more, a long road ahead of us to complete all of our missions. That was something he said. Also, one more thing he said that I think is in direct correlation to a tweet earlier today by Ali Larijani from Iran. Basically, he's saying this is an America First war, unlike what Larijani said, that this is an Israel First war, sort of trying to frame it the way the Iranians are trying to frame it, also trying to maybe fan the flames when it comes to global, to regional allies, saying basically the U.S. is favoring Israel over you. Nobody has your backs.
This was the Pentagon's response to that, wouldn't you say? What we heard?
I would not say not. And another interesting thing here, when he's talking about the partnership with Israel, and he's talking about Israel as being a very capable partner. Trump being the businessman that he is, the showman that he is. Also, he loves winners, and Israel and Netanyahu specifically has managed, despite everything that we saw on October 7th, since then, to flip the script.
Yeah.
And position themselves as the winner, as an almighty power, and in that sense, it's a capable partner. Unlike what I think he's suggesting to the European partners that are better in
clutching their pearls. Are we sitting in one of those clutching pearls countries?
Might just be.
Teresa.
Yeah, what was interesting to me that Hegseth spoke about the former regime, saying that they were not going for a regime change, but that the regime has changed.
Yeah.
And obviously Khamenei was killed, so the supreme leader is gone and will most likely change. But I think he's being overly optimistic here, unless he has information that he didn't share with us, because I don't see this is a former regime. They're still holding on very much. So, at least from what you can tell from the outside, I mean, there's a council that's formed, and we will see elections for a new supreme leader taking place. I don't know if it's connected to what Shani just said, that they're looking for a Venezuela-style scenario and just installing somebody else to take over. That's certainly something Iranians would probably not very much enjoy, because they were going for regime change after all. In these protests we saw back in January, they demanded regime change. They don't want some sort of change. They don't want another supreme leader who's being a bit nicer to them. They want the regime gone.
Okay. I think we all agree that Germany is one of the clutching pearls countries that the secretary
will know better.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he definitely had someone writing the speech for him. I think we agree on that. Germany is one of the countries, though, that would traditionally raise a flag and say, "Wait a minute, are we talking about a loss of life in any type of military operation?" With that in mind, I want you to take a listen to what a spokesperson from the German Chancellery had to say. This was said just within the last 24 hours about the situation between Iran, the U.S., and Israel. Take a listen.
We are talking about the self-defense of the German armed forces, the self-defense of the soldiers stationed there. The wording expresses that we reserve the right to protect our soldiers in the region if they are attacked. Bundeswehr soldiers naturally exercise this right to self-defense. We are not involved in this operation militarily.
All right, I want to pull in now our political correspondent, Matthew Moore. He has been covering this part of the story for us today. Matthew, where does Germany stand right now on this Monday afternoon, Central European time, on possibly joining the war?
Brent, that's a very good question. There were reports coming out of Israel early this morning that from the local media there that Germany was prepared to join this military operation, this US-Israel military operation. But the message really from the German government today is that that is not the case. The foreign minister first came out very, very clearly dismissed those reports. He said actually that we don't actually have the necessary means to help in this operation. Now, there was some attention alluded to in that comment from the government spokesperson, Stefan Cornelius, about German soldiers in the region defending themselves. Now, there were a number of multinational bases that were targeted in recent days, and among those bases, one in Erbil, Iraq, and another in Al-Azraq in Jordan, where German soldiers were based there. But they were not harmed in the attacks on those bases, and nor did any harm come to German equipment. We understand that they've been preparing, really, given how tense the situation is, in recent weeks, that they've been preparing, kind of, you can imagine the security protocols have been well rehearsed by now, Brent. And so we were safely in fortified bunkers, and as I say, no harm came to any of those. But the message really in some of the statements is that, of course, if German soldiers are attacked, they are well within their rights and are expected to defend themselves.
That's the point, right? I mean, the foreign minister is saying that German soldiers, staff of the Bundeswehr, are free to defend themselves. And knowing that we've already had 2 military camps with Bundeswehr staff present, 2 camps have already been attacked. Will we see engagement by German forces there?
That remains to be seen. We simply don't know. We know that every hour we're getting fresh reports. As I say, there's 2. I think we can distinguish between whether Germany will take part in this military operation that the US and Israel is engaging in, this war in Iran, and the message is clearly no. But as we've heard, the Foreign Ministry, the Defence Ministry, not ruling out German soldiers defending themselves should it come to that. It's worth just saying you have, I think, around 500 Bundeswehr soldiers in the region, German armed forces in the region, involved in various UN missions there. So there is a presence, very small presence, it must be said. There was in the past, last year and the year before, there was warships in the region, but they're no longer there. They were taking part in those operations to guard against Houthi attacks. So at the moment it's a very, very small presence. But as you say, this the nature of this story and the nature of the conflict is that it's escalating and changing by the hour. But at the moment, there's no plans for Germany to join this military operation that, as I say, is fundamentally in the hands of the American army and the Israeli army.
And Matthew, let's just do a thought experiment here for a second. Does Germany's army, does it have the means to enter this war? Even if it said we're going to, does it have the means to do that?
Well, the German foreign minister, who we can take at his word, says that Germany doesn't have the necessary support to actually take part in this. By that, I think we're talking about very, very high-tech combat drones, which Germany has just actually last week, Brent, signed a contract to start purchasing, so it doesn't have those kind of weapons at the moment. As I say, it doesn't have warships in the region. The warships that it does have are involved in other United Nations or European Union or NATO missions and not ready to be deployed to such an effort.
Yeah.
And again, when it comes to stealth bombers and so on, Germany is just really focusing very much at the moment on the defence and NATO defence here in Europe, where we are. And so therefore, I think we have to take Johann Vadefeld, the German foreign minister, at his word when he says we do not have the necessary help to play a role in this. That's not to say, Brent, it could be that Germany will be supporting the Israeli army. There are long-standing relationships there where Germany will provide some weapons, but technical support. But at the moment, no plans to engage in this operation directly.
Matthew, I want to put you on the spot here. And just a very brief answer, please. We know that the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, he is going to Washington, D.C. Is it a done deal? Is it certain that he's going to be able to come back when he wants to, fly back, just because of the situation with air travel right now?
You are putting me on the spot, Brendan. I appreciate that. I think that there's no questions about that the Chancellor will be able to fly to Washington, D.C. later today and return home fairly safely. But there were question marks about whether he would be able to travel at all.
Yeah.
But that visit will go ahead, Brent, and it comes obviously at a very, very useful time because there are lots of questions about what happens next, as you've been talking about for the last hour.
Okay.
Germany's put itself in a position of saying we are concerned about how the Europeans and we as Germans can make sure that region reaches a stability and that peace we are able to reach peace in the region, that Iran can prosper without nuclear weapons, without ballistic missile programs. And so Germany's very much already thinking about the next steps that come after this operation.
All right, Matthew Moore cleaning up the spot there for us. Matthew, as always, we appreciate your reporting. Thank you. All right, looking at the clock here, we've got about a little under 4 minutes now. So what do we know now? How much wiser are we in this hour moving forward? What can we expect? What should we be bracing for?
We are still in the phase that both sides are trying to, signal to the other, I'm in for the long stretch. Nothing's going to stop me. Showing complete defiance, showing complete, determination. I think if on the long term, however, neither side can play for time, and definitely not Israel. This is where we might be seeing down the line some daylight between the American president and Israel. I'm not sure how long it's sustainable to expect Israel to halt and actually be able to accept whatever might come down out of this war. But we're still in the thick of it. We're still in the very early stages. We're getting very clear signs that this is nowhere near the end from any sides.
Teresa?
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind that both Trump and Netanyahu have been calling on Iranians to return to the streets and basically finish the job that they've started.
Yeah.
So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Also, Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah, who's an opposition leader in the US at the moment, has been saying the same. He said, watch this sport, I'll let you know when it's time for you to rise up and finish the job. So let's keep an eye out for that.
You've been to Iran numerous times reporting. Based on what you have seen, the people that and your sources there, is the chance of a domestic uprising, basically toppling the government from within, are the chances of that happening now, are they significantly greater on this Monday than they were on Friday?
I think so. Not right now, because I mean the attacks are still ongoing. And would you go to the streets to protest if there are still bombs raining down on you? No, probably not. But once that stops, I think yes, because Iranian protesters tried to topple this regime like a number of times in the past decade, like the last time only being in January, which was when then cracked down hard upon. And they are very aware that they depend on some sort of outside help because they couldn't get it done on their own. And now that outside help has finally arrived, I mean, they've been looking for that for weeks now. I think many people are really willing to take a risk when the time is right.
But we also don't know about any covert operations that are on the ground by CIA, by Mossad trying. It could be that I won't be surprised if there's a plan for the second phase. And I think, again, when we're talking about the end, the exit point here, there could be different exit points to the military strategy and to the one of the regime change, which could still unfold for many months longer after the military operation may have been concluded.
Is that what if you were a betting woman, would you be betting on some type of covert operation being the next major step of what is, seems to be something more than just an overnight conflict?
I would be surprised if there's nothing in the pipeline.
All right. Teresa, Shani, to both of you, we appreciate you having you here at the big table with us. Excellent analysis as always. And we want to thank you for joining us right here, live streaming on DW. And this is not the end of our coverage. Our coverage continues. You can stay with us by watching our YouTube channel and, of course, by watching DW TV. For all of us here in Berlin, I'm Brent Goff. Stay with us. The news continues.